Our next presenter is going to be Professor Chris Rogers from Tufts University, who is going to talk about, let's take a look here. He's going to talk about the results of online project-based learning in the midst of a pandemic. Mr. Rogers, can you hear me?
Yep. Should I go ahead and start?
Yeah, sure. Do your thing.
Excellent. All right. Good morning or evening or whatever, everyone. Renz, if you can please confirm that you guys can see the presentation.
Yes, we all can. Thank you.
Excellent. So I thought I'd talk for 10 minutes about my class in the spring when the class completely changed. So it's a junior level class at Tufts University in Boston, and it's a introduction to robotics class. We started out all Lego, and then when all the students had to go home, we continued with all Lego, and they took the Legos home with them. So I guess before going into showing you what they did, I always like to talk about, well, what is it I'm trying to teach? And so these are the clear learning goals of the robotics class. Really, I'm just trying to teach students how to be curious so that they want to motivate their own learning, so they want to figure stuff out, how to learn on their own. So as any student in this class will tell you, it's very much a case of being tossed into the deep end and trying to figure it all out. How to reflect on what you've actually found to see whether or not you can have enough evidence to support whatever hypothesis you're looking at, and then how to teach self-confidence so that once you understand a concept, you can transfer that knowledge into new areas. The reason I do all this is we actually have a center at Tufts which specializes in looking at how the brain actually learns to engineer. And so I'm leveraging a lot of the research that's been done worldwide actually on how can we optimize the learning process. And what you find is when you do some of these methods, students learn more quickly, they retain the material longer, and they also are more excited about it. The other goal I have is to try and balance the ability to think in a certain way and to replicate other people's thinking. So if you think about it, a lot of our K-12, we spend the time trying to teach you how to think like somebody else, or teach you how to understand somebody else's thinking. What was Newton thinking? What was Shakespeare thinking? As opposed to really thinking for yourself. And you can see this in terms of what people often will call misconceptions, which where kids have models that aren't necessarily in agreement with the latest scientific model. I tend to think of these as levels of fidelity. So the scientific models have maybe a higher level of fidelity, but to the kids that have these conceptions, it actually is a model, and they have reasons for their model. They just might not have had been thought about it as much as maybe Newton did. We also spend a lot of time teaching facts, but I'm actually interested in teaching mindsets, so ways of thinking. So how do you approach a problem? What do you do first? How do you work in teams? All this kind of stuff. And what that ends up in is my class is mostly about what we call solution diversity, or a large variation of answers as opposed to one right answer. And I'll show you a couple of these. So the class started out, we used EV3s because we really wanted Wi-Fi and Spike Prime. And you can make a Wi-Fi dongle, but it's a bit of work. So out came the EV3s. And of course, the very first thing you have to do is a sumo wrestling bot. And you can see a few of them here. There were 28 kids in the class. We had 14 different bots competing. And yes, of course, we did throw all the bots into the ring and see who won at the end. Owen's bot in the lower right is kind of cool because it actually is all about capturing you and dragging you away. The next one was to see if you could actually grab the Coke bottle that's in the middle of the room. And you can see a number of different grabbers. The key thing is you controlled your robot from your phone. So students learned how to use a basic online database, and the robot would push and pull from that database. And then they raced. We had a big circle of robots, said go, and they raced to get to the middle of the room first and grab the bottle. We then talked a little bit about basic electronics. So they had to build their own line following system. And you can see here a number of different solutions to the problem of multiple. We just used cadmium sulfate cells and some LEDs, and as well as a little bit of control theory. Then we started to get into haptic feedback. So how can you feel, get some sort of feeling back to understand how to control a robot more effectively? So the idea here was, could you build a robot that could look at a picture in a book and actually let somebody feel the picture? So how can we develop a robot to help the blind actually see images? And so what you see is you're moving a light sensor back and forth, and then the joystick in some way pushes back on you depending on the intensity of the light it sees. Then we put in walls, little wooden walls, and it was a race to identify a letter that we had written out underneath the various robots. We then got into some basic artificial intelligence. We did just a k-nearest neighbors approach to try and model the motion of an accelerometer. So everyone got an Arduino Nano, and that by moving the accelerometer around, you could classify different accelerations to play different notes, and then you had to perform your piece in front of the entire class. And that was pretty funny. In fact, some people even had built-in recording devices, so you would play your notes and then you could do a playback, including erasing bad notes. Then the midterm came, and of course, the midterm in this case was can you throw a ball into the cup? So you can see the cup and the ball. The key thing is I can put the cup wherever I want. You can measure it with a distance sensor, and then you have to figure out how hard to kick the ball to make it just go into the cup. The nice thing about this is you can do this with Newton's laws. You can do this with a basic linear regression model. You can also do this with a full neural net. And so people did all of those. And then we did some sorting of Lego pieces. And so this was a neural net, so they use teachable machines. If you haven't played with that, I'd highly recommend it. But the idea was to throw a bunch of Lego into a bin and have this thing hold it up in front of the camera. Camera identifies what piece it is, and then stick it in the correct bin. And then, of course, you need your final project where you have to pull everything together. And so in the final project, we originally had intended to build a robotic system that cooked cupcakes for you. So you would, online, you would choose what you want your cupcake to look like. It would actually bake it, it would frost it, it would package it, and then the other half of the class would build the autonomous vehicle that would then deliver it. Well, that was the plan, but when we sent all the students home in the middle of March, that plan had to be revisited. So what we decided instead was to develop a Rube Goldberg machine that went across 28 different bedrooms across the United States and Turkey. And so we did that. People took their Lego sets home with them. We gave every student a Lego set. And they came up with a rather impressive set of different ways of moving the ball from the left-hand side of the screen to the right-hand side of the screen. And I will try to show you a movie on this, and hopefully you all can see it. So we started off with a dog that responded to voice commands, so you could tell it to sit or stay, and it would move the ball across. Jared's would pick up the piece you had asked for and move it. Of course, mini golf is critical. Priya's video game in reality, a lot of robotic arms. You'll see the kicking the ball still paid off. And of course, we have the ball flying across the room. This one would actually know exactly where the thing was and drop it in the right spot. Another voice command robot. This one actually used every single piece in the Lego set. That's what she was most proud of. A crazy walker. This one you could tell it how many times to swing the person around before dumping them out, the person being the ball. This one would actually track the motion of the ball and paint it on the left-hand side. And of course, no good Rube Goldberg machine works without Jurassic Park or bowling. Bowling works quite well as well. This one will pick up the ball and put it in one of 3 stacks. Might as well play some cards with your bot. So this one would play blackjack with you and then throw the ball up to 1. This one included chickens. The one on the right actually included the entire student house. And this one detects where the ball is and moves it over using a camera. That's an image processing. This one does active tracking of the ball, so it would catch it and then throws it. The throwing is my favorite. And hits the bullseye every time. And then this one actually was an automated pinball game, and then a basketball player that could dribble the ball. So you can see there's a wide diversity of solutions, a wide diversity of complexity of solutions. And so a lot of the class was trying to figure out how to get each person to be able to master all aspects of that complexity, from the image processing to the artificial intelligence to some of the manufacturing and electronics. I wanted to show quickly some of the past projects. So I teach this class every year, and every year I use a different theme. So you can see at the bottom, we decided to, as a class, feed the provost lunch. He's the one in the poncho, in case things didn't go well. So robots took his order, they cooked his food, they delivered it to him, they cleaned up afterwards, and they gave him a dinner mint at the end. Right above that, you can see the sorting hat from Hogwarts. We had the Marauders map, so it was an IoT class, and we built a full Marauders map that started when you swore you were up to no good. We used Google's voice recognition for that. To the right of that is a symphony that we played. We had, I think it was 10 different instruments, from violins to trombones to even a set of bagpipes to zithers and all that were played by robots. A friend of mine composed a piece for them, and they played the piece. It sounded awful, but it looked really cool. We painted your portrait with a robot. You'll see that one as well. And then the last three were a freshman course that I offered just this last fall, which was pure IoT. And so every week we had a different IoT problem. And you can see in the lower right a little bus stop that tells you when the bus is coming. On the upper right, there's a hamburger that would tell you what's being served using an AR experience, telling you what's being served at the local restaurant, at the local cafeterias on campus. And then on the left is Annika's plant thing for your desk, and with a mark that'll give you all sorts of different information within our augmented reality thing on your phone. So where to next? So what we're starting to play with now is how do we do a whole bunch of this stuff with Spike Prime, mostly looking around, again, home automation and IoT. If two pictures here are some AI stuff that students have been working on. The upper right is a durometer. It classifies hard and soft, and then you can go around and check anything you want around your house and see whether it is hard or soft, depending on your training. The one in the middle is actually a two-dimensional traverse system that moves a light sensor around. It can identify Lego pieces. It then also is going to be able to play tic-tac-toe with you and maybe solve some mazes. We have started to play with what's called a reality engine, which is this ability to take out your phone, look at your robot in your phone's camera, and then hit some waypoints on your phone and say go, and the robot will drive to those waypoints. So we're trying to figure out how to incorporate some of this sort of spatial programming as well into our courses. Hopefully that we can take this down into the elementary and middle school grades. And then finally, for the past couple of years, we've been playing a lot with the OpenMV cameras, which are small cameras that are programmable and can do a lot of artificial intelligence. And so combining them with the Spike Prime or the EV3 or an Arduino or any other robotic kit, you suddenly can have an intelligent camera or intelligent vision system. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening, and I would be happy to answer any questions in the remaining 2 minutes.
Well, first off, I'd like to thank you for this awesome presentation. It was very inspiring stuff. We have some people in the comment section over on YouTube who were all amazed, simply stating, wow, this is amazing, very cool. And we have one question coming in. It was from Belinda Watson asking what age these students were.
So all of the ones I showed you were college students. However, we've done all of these problems with kids as young as 7 and 8, and even some of the more simple problems down ages of 3 and 4.
Okay, well that's awesome to hear. Yeah. Now we have something coming in from Ken. He says that he loves the final project challenge. That integration of every machine that you made so far, was that a real hurdle, or was it easier to overcome than you thought?
Well, for me, it was easy. I just assigned it. It was more of a hurdle for the students, so you'd have to ask them how tough they found it to integrate all this stuff. I think for the most part, they all succeeded. So hopefully they liked it. And I doubt that.
I have another personal question. Do those students, did they ever think of something that you were amazed by yourself, that they really innovate something that you didn't see coming?
Pretty much every time. Every time there were at least 2 or 3 things that you just didn't even think of. I mean, like the ball throwing one guy developed a system that would shoot the ball across the entire room. That one obviously never occurred to me. And the Rube Goldberg one, we had the chickens that were actually interacting with the Rube Goldberg. That never occurred to me. There's one of the things you didn't see in the movie is one of the final projects shot a glider across the room. And that's how he got the ball from one side to the other. So yes, every time.
Oh yeah, well that sounds awesome. We have one more question coming in, and it reads: did the students have to do any documentation?
Yep. So every activity has a full e-portfolio, and then for their final project, they had to build a website that included everything.
Okay. Well, I think that's about the time we have for today. I'd like to thank you for this presentation. It was really really awesome, and yeah, I wish you the best of the days.
Thanks a lot for hosting me. It was a lot of fun.
No problem. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.